Welcome. This is the Below the Trees podcast. This is episode number 10. I'm doing a special episode here with Professor Ron from an elite university where ChatGPT has tons of questions the professor has not yet thought of. So welcome to a special guest episode with Professor Ron of a undisclosed university.
All right, this works.
With quite a bit of prestige. And we'll just kind of leave it there.
We'll leave it there.
So, I wanted to kind of take this opportunity for a few things, right? So, like, one thing would be I haven't connected with you with this setup ever.
Right.
We've never done this.
Right.
We went to high school together.
We did.
That's the background.
That's a background.
And where we really became fast friends was because of music.
Yeah.
Because we started a jazz band.
We were in the jazz band.
We were
That's right.
the first and only, or I don't know if it was a revival, but at least for us, when we graduated in high school, we brought back jazz to our local LA private school system.
Yeah. That's what we did. Yes, we were part of the jazz revival. I don't know about a revival, but it was a great scene. And I remember a story. I still tell this story about a time we did a gig at a parish. We did a gig at a local parish.
Okay.
And after we did that gig, these guys I think they were in a ranchero group.
Okay.
One of them came up to me and he had said, he's like, "Hey man, I heard your sound, bro, on that saxophone, man. You should join our band." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, play me a little something." I was like, he's like, "Oh man, that's great. Yeah, that's great, bro. Like, oh my man, you should totally join the band." Yeah. And I was like, "Okay." So when I told my mom, I was like, "Mom, these guys want me to join their band." He's like, "What kind of band?" And I was like, "It's a ranchero." She's like, "Ranchero? A ranchero band?" I'm like, "Well, no, Mom, anyway, it's going to be awesome." She's like, "Well, what time?" And I said, "Tuesdays at 9:00. She's like, "I'm not going to let you play with a bunch of random men at 9:00 on a Tuesday. Right. You need to be doing school." Anyway, so we had to keep it at, El Negrito had to keep it at the at the high school. Anyway, but no, so that was actually but there were other things too. The playing on campus, and it was a good time. Yeah. Anyway.
I think that's where we really exploded our friendship. Like, we'd always have fun in the classrooms, right? Yeah. And you were definitely one of the brightest, the most out there in the fun, having fun.
Kill me. Oh.
No. Making this like drudgery
fair enough.
Turn into something actually worthwhile to showing up and participating.
It was a good time. Yeah.
Because if you didn't participate, then you wouldn't be able to have fun with you, right?
Fair.
So that's fair,
yeah,
right?
That's fair.
But it didn't really, or at least in my eyes, the friendship really didn't blow until you started playing your saxophone.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
And I started playing congas.
Yeah.
I had just picked up the instrument. Clearly, you have played music before. You have the bug. You've been bitten by it.
I've been bitten by the bug, yeah.
But we're not here to talk about music.
Yeah.
We're not here to reminisce that much.
Right, yeah.
The agenda was we're supposed to let ChatGPT ask you a bunch of crazy questions.
Let iRobot will decide. I'm really curious about this experiment. This is kind of cool. This is very interesting. Yeah, let's see what's up.
So I basically asked ChatGPT using 3 people that I personally admire. And I wanted to see, okay, if I'm speaking to a university professor, give me some questions that these 3 people would want to ask. Right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so I have these questions. They're on my phone.
All right.
But let's get started. Then we'll just talk about them and do what we do.
Do what we do. This is funny.
Okay. So first couple questions
Yeah.
are about AI and cognitive biases.
Cognitive bias. Okay.
It's not Jeopardy.
No, I got you.
It looks like
I'm processing. No, this is actually
what's his name? The other judge, the other announcer for
Oh, right.
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
cue the music.
And then cognitive bias. I'm not like cognitive bias. Artificial intelligence and cognitive bias.
Here comes the clock.
All right, very interesting. Yeah, no, it's just I think about this is actually really funny. I think a lot about this. But go on. All right, so what about cognitive bias?
Do you think AI is making us smarter or just better at outsourcing our thinking? Like, are we becoming a little lazier upstairs?
Oh, that's really good. Funny. That's funny. So there's a really cool paper out there called the extended mind thesis.
Okay.
David Clark and Andy Chalmers put out a paper way back. I'm trying to remember. Early 2000s. This might have been maybe soon. I should remember when they did this.
Yeah.
But I'm reducing it for the purpose of discussion, and I'm probably also just only have so much grasp of the paper.
It's all good.
But they talked about how, all right, let's say someone says, hey, can we do coffee on the 24th? And you're like, oh yeah, I think I can do that. Then you pull out your calendar, and then you be like, you go through it and be like, actually the 24th doesn't work, but could we do the 1st of December or the 2nd of December? And then there you go. Like you have an idea already roughly in your brain of what your calendar looks like.
Sure.
So your calendar in this instance, because it's part of your cognitive apparatus of memory and decision making, is part of the extended mind. Now, the problem is like, okay, well, it's one thing to have an immaterial object that's not involved in computation on its, like, as an automata, as like something that does it itself, like, powered by some sort of energy or whatever. You're just dealing with something that's just on your reflexes. It's just like, oh yeah, it's on hand, like I use it all the time. Okay, blah blah blah. And so then when you have an automata or any kind of like computational device that is part of your sort of ordinary reflexes, when we ask, hey, what's the number for blah 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 blah, or can you call mom, instead of just me calling mom and then I don't remember my mom's number. I remember my mom's number, but I won't tell you. Or if you remember some, anyway, for some data points that you would otherwise have on hand, but then you now have lost, then it's no longer simply part of your extended mind, but that you would have outsourced it. So the trick is, it's like, okay, what are the kinds of things that you don't really mind not having on hand, versus the things that you probably should have on hand. Anyway, so that's the AI and cognitive bias element in that, right? Like, dealing with our memory function and everything else, versus just ordinary usage. Yeah. That's a really good question.
But like you're saying, I mean, remembering phone numbers, I remember as a kid, I mean, I didn't have a phone until maybe my like junior year. Right?
Yeah.
Of high school.
Oh man.
And so for all that time, I had to remember lots of phone numbers. And I had them.
Yeah, that's exactly
I still have quite a few.
Yeah.
But that recall of just having 10 digits that I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I know that's gone.
Right. And it matters, and it not only matters because it's already intimate, but there's some stuff I actually think, and I would never want to get into an alarmist view about technology, like a kind of like Starnet or Skylink, whatever, from Terminator. But it's just like, I think there's a really good rational use to just like, okay, there's actually some facts that I would never ordinarily have on hand. Like, I think we were doing something earlier today about like, what's the like a random fact. Like, what's the population of blah, blah, blah. Or what was Sting and the Police's 6th album? Like, okay, well, that's like a layer of fact that I would never have on hand because it's so obscure. But it becomes relevant because of a conversation, yada yada. So I would, so it's like, okay, fine. We don't remember as many like phone numbers of our intimates that we should. Okay, we could work on doing that again. But then there's some stuff that's just like a kind of person who naturally remembers the 7th album or 6th album of Sting and the Police, or the population data for the province over from, Quebec. It's like, what? Like, why do they have this information randomly?
Right.
Anyway, so that's my view on that.
Do you think we're getting smarter or dumber?
Oh, smarter or dumber?
In that sense, then.
I think,
or is it neither?
Neither. We're getting neither smarter nor dumber. I think it's shifting our expectations for what technology is supposed to do.
Okay, that's fair.
The speed that we use these things with is really interesting. So it's like I used to.
Well, that's where we start getting on the cyborg side, right?
A little bit, yeah. And there's theorists of that. I mean, but
I'm a cyborg currently.
You're a cyborg.
I mean, I have these questions that I asked a robot.
That doesn't make you a cyborg.
It's an extension of my hand at the current moment.
Yeah, but it would be more like a pencil. It would be more like, do I write? It's something that's more closer to your ordinary life as opposed to like, I don't know. It's like, it's one thing to pull a pencil. That's like sort of an instrument, but you're the main agent. You're the main agent behind using the pencil or that function of like, generate some questions.
Right.
Yeah, this is kind of, any person can maybe think of questions, some kinds of questions. There's a class or set of questions that just dang near anybody can make up.
Right.
Then cool, like.
But also the prompt.
And prompts. Yeah, sure, fine.
So we'll see how my prompt.
Yeah.
Kind of.
How much it differs.
I
think it'll, but then at the same time, it's like, but it was us who said it. Even if like people who talk about like the difference between like grammar and meaning, or who talk about do we focus on meaning as grammar or meaning as use?
Yeah.
We'll talk about this. So it's like, okay, sure. Like there's a set of orders of sentences that are sensible sentences in a given natural language.
Yeah.
And the problem then becomes, well, okay, like you don't need a particular user set. Or you don't need like a bunch of people who happen to use this language to be able to determine that this is a rational usage of the order of sentences, like the rational usage of the grammar.
Yeah.
The grammar is like far from, or it's not far from, it's independent of in many parts from the context of usage, one might say.
Okay.
This is essentially the basis of computational linguistics. So just like you have a set of protocol sentences with a set of structures, if and only if functions, blah, 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 whatever. I don't know that much about compling, but this is more or less where I kind of get what they're after.
Yeah.
But then there's other people who would say like, nah, like the use context matters, like, because then we also have to ask, how does a language change? If a language can change, then the idea that the grammar set or sort of the set of reasonable structures in the language, like, don't depend on any set of users will be odd. Like, does it just change because it's in the sky? No, it changes because of people's usages in aggregate. Anyway, so it's like, so in the more sort of like in that group of rational kinds of sentences, you could say there's some that are also just extremely common, and that's what GPT picks up.
Right.
I feel. So I mean, yeah, and the prompts too. So it may well be, yeah, there's some stuff that we've said already that most people in this combination of factors would say. But then there's probably some stuff that they wouldn't, which is kind of, which is, I think, intuitive to say there's some stuff that the robots will do, and there's some stuff the robots will not do. That was a very long-winded way of just saying what is kind of intuitive to you and to me. Anyway, so but there it goes. Maybe not to everyone. Anyway, all right, I'm done. All right, what's the next thing, John?
All right,
Please.
Let's go. One more AI question.
All right, another AI question.
Could AI end up feeding our biases instead of fixing them? Like, are we training it, or is it training us?
Well, it's both, obviously. All right. Well, the part of it training us.
I mean, it's kind of funny that it's making that assumption that like I am now the overlord on your thinking.
Overlord's a bit strong, but it's like it's kind of okay. Well, in the situation of learning and teaching, there's going to be a shift in balance.
Yeah, here we go.
On any kind of subject. Oh my God, this is hilarious. I was just reading this on oh, this is so embarrassing. But the Ray Monk biography of Ludwig Wittgenstein, who was a philosopher of language and mathematics and logic, blah, 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 blah. Cambridge people back in the 20s and 30s and blah, 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 blah. Point being is he was the story goes, and it's basically a good story, is that Wittgenstein, this random kind of Viennese guy who they all thought he was German, but he was Vietnamese. He was Viennese.
Vietnamese.
He was Vietnamese. He was Viennese. Is friends with
He brought the pho back in phonetics.
Pho in philosophy. He brings the pho back in philosophy. That'd be funny. That's a little bit, that's Vietnamese Wittgenstein. No, but
we're done.
He's talking with Bertrand Russell. So eventually he meets Bertrand Russell. Someone introduces him, tells him to go to Bertrand Russell to learn about math and logic and study logic and stuff. And eventually, Wittgenstein really goes ham on the logic stuff. I mean, and you would think Russell would want to do it forever. But after he wrote the Principia Mathematica, he kind of got tired, thinking about, how there's sort of logical basis to mathematics. And there's elements of it that, are not necessarily dependent on sort of the number concept, but just on that objects belong to domains and they have types and blah, 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 blah. Like there's ways, stuff.
Order.
Yeah, exactly. Structure. Anyway, so Wittgenstein, that was the kind of Russell that he really liked. And so he really went ham in on the logic stuff. But, Russell wanted to talk about other stuff. He wanted to talk about meaning and mysticism and peace and war.
Why am I not a Christian?
Why am I not a Christian? Yeah, he wanted to talk about other stuff. He wanted to be part of this other...
He's over it.
Right. He got over the Principia, which is hilarious to imagine someone getting over the Principia Mathematica, which I have not read all the way through. I got through the starts of it. It's I can't want to deal with this. I want the other philosophy. Anyway, but Wittgenstein was obsessed with it. And at some point, he became the person that Russell would turn to for a question about logic. So if Russell had a half-assed thought or a sort of a preliminary thought, he'd be like, I'll ask Wittgenstein, see what Wittgenstein says. And Wittgenstein, in a way, became kind of an extension of Russell's project. But then over time, Wittgenstein would sort of push back and say, now, wait a minute, don't you actually think yada, yada, yada? And there were just some things that Wittgenstein didn't know well about, mysticism or broader structures of meaning. That's a better way of putting it. And, so I mean, even if you have so even in the ordinary language situation where there's sort of a teacher, sort of a human teacher and a human learner, at some point the balance shifts. So that doesn't make Wittgenstein the overlord of Russell. Right? Anyway,
no, for sure.
I don't mean to poke at you about the thing about the overlord thing, but it's just a really interesting question. So
it's language, not mine.
Yeah, it's language, not mine. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. That's funny. Maybe it thinks it's the overlord. Maybe it's being funny. I like to think it's being funny. I'm the overlord. I like Invader Zim. I'm the overlord. I'm like, yeah, okay, buddy. Right? I'm being Memetics. Oh Lord. Okay.
What's the craziest example you've seen of an idea spreading like wildfire online? How does a dumb TikTok trend become a global movement?
Well, so we are already interacting with a complicated network of connections that have been building by commerce and trade.
Yeah.
From you could say the late 19th century to and then in another wave in after World War II, and then even more actually would probably be 70s and right and then the fall of the Soviet Union, which sort of makes the former Soviet republics part of this really complicated kind of contest of what we do after a particular kind of social and market order. Whatever. Point being is, prior to the deregulation of the internet, or sort of the proliferation of the internet, deregulation of it, that is the precursor to what we have now. We were already kind of in a really connected world, and so then when you solidify the sort of internet networks that we build roughly from 89 to that's the time of BitNet to World Wide Web. So up to 96. From up to 96 and then moving forward, the internet network was already happening on top of an already existing information sharing, trade, commerce, political, and media landscape. Then all you have to do is make the internet even more powerful to move things faster.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can share images really easily across vast distances. So, meme stuff. For me, that's the context of meme stuff. It's like there's this whole story of globalization, or a container for the history of globalization we could tell from the 19th century to the present. And then, bam, you just made our technology better. And then now it can spread stuff around.
And great memes break language.
Great memes break language. In some ways, it's hard to explain. Yeah, it's hard to explain some memes. I would say that, but it doesn't mean that they don't have a grammar to them. Like you don't need words to have grammar.
Or the social context.
Yeah.
To understand it, but so long as I think, like you're saying, this mass proliferation of information, ideas, concepts, movies.
Yeah.
Right. And movies basically shifting medium as well. Instead of being this localized, you have to go to the theater. We can now just all stay at home, rent a movie, stream it. Now we're all accepting of every ideas worldwide, and so let's all just watch these foreign films can help you.
Yeah,
I'm just seeing this how this trend
you're right
starts taking off.
Absolutely, it makes sense to me. I'm just processing because that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah. So there's two ways. It's like connection. There's like a connection problem, and then there's massification.
Okay.
Or and then a third problem would be conscientização, or connection. Sorry, Portuguese. Consciousization. Sorry. So connection, massification, consciousization. So, all right, we already just talked about connection. It's like great, like all of these information sharing patterns had already been established, like on the other side of the 19th century and then the Second World War. Then we have the World Wide Web. Okay, fine, that's a connection problem. Then we made our internet capacities better. All right, that solves the connection question. But the thing about that we're willing to accept anything, that we might be willing to accept anything, is I think the interesting massification question, that it turns us into the masses, the unthinking masses. It could conceivably, but it's not impossible to also be the masses and still be a thinking masses, which is where consciousization comes in. The idea that we can critically read the world as it appears to us, or the way the world is, or the ways the world is,
or the way the world is shown to us.
The way the world is shown to us, or to idea of what we would want the world to be like. So it's like if our information sharing, consumption of technology and whatnot makes it impossible to think of other kinds of ways to do things, then we've been massified. We've become the unthinking masses, as opposed to using it for goods, right? Then that's more of a consciousization question, I think.
But I think especially when there's an event that can cause a schism, can make a shift, can change opinions. I'm just thinking back, let's think of like 9/11. The propaganda that was then spouted to us is that now we need to go fight the terror that clearly happened. We start naming nations, terrorist nations, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we have this entire agenda. We're now at a war, right?
Yeah.
And what's the most shareable things? It's the videos of literally watching the first rockets leave the battleship at 3:30 in the morning. And it's spread everywhere in every language. Everyone wants to see it.
Absolutely. And then it becomes about...
Now it's a social connection and cohesion to say, these people are this is that.
Yeah.
Right?
We, they, creating a sort of we-they dynamic. We are the good, they are the terrorists.
Right.
Yes, I understand.
We can go way back.
Absolutely. These are the kinds of problems. Yeah, that keeps popping up.
So how do we either kind of have pushback on technology, or are we just going to let this massive train that has been just going, just let it keep rolling?
I think, I've started with my media habits.
Okay.
So there's a personal element, but then there's some systemic stuff that I don't have, that obviously no one person could ever have control over. But me, certain hours of the day is when I will consume my media.
Okay.
Like, and I'll let myself go ham. I actually am embarrassed to say my Instagram habits are really crazy. I have chronicles of right and wrong. That's one folder. I use the saved function on Instagram a lot. I have the animals are becoming. Where the animals, they all support one version of conspiracy theory or another. So it's like,
love it.
If my videos, if I find videos that are like, where animals are behaving weirdly, very, very, very intelligently.
So now I know what to send you.
Oh God! then I'll save that in my folder. Anyway, but then I do that. But then I'll do that for maybe like I'll give that about 10 minutes, 10 maybe 15. I'm like, okay, this is fun. Message some people back. But then if you didn't get me on that cycle, I'm like, sorry, I'll have to catch you tomorrow. Or, so a lot of my friends kind of like when they send me stuff on Instagram, they don't see me reply for a while because I'm just off cycle. But then when I get back on cycle, that's when I like respond like, oh, that's funny. Or like, but I can only watch so much at a time.
Which is hilarious to me that you say that because you're now the...
How many number of people who have said the same thing?
Teacher.
Oh, who says that?
Yeah.
That's funny.
That I think your social battery having to deal with so many students is just so drained. And then when you get to your phone and you just see literally more of the same,
basically
you're kind of checked out.
A little bit. Yeah, but
it happens so fast, so quickly. You're like, I don't want it. I'll cycle through this for a sec.
Yeah. And then there's kinds of, and
that's hilarious.
Right. Yeah. But then you go on the internet and you're like, okay, well now maybe I have shown an example of being a person who's massified, where I'm the uncritical, unthinking masses because I'm drained and I don't like to criticize what's happening on the media landscape. Maybe if I were more critical of what's happening on the media landscape, maybe I would be contributing to consciousization. Perhaps. But I only have so many friends on my social media.
Right.
I do not have a lot of friends. I'm not an influencer. I'm just an ordinary user. I have maybe no more than 300 people, maybe less. So, great.
Denbar's number? Whose number is that?
I don't know whose. Oh, to what degrees? How many degrees of separation we are?
No. Not the separation. There's a number of like you can only have like 250 people in your group. Like in your tribe.
Oh, yeah, that. Yeah, the number effect, or size effect. Yeah, no, size effect and information sharing is basically kind of where we could flag what we just talked about. But, like, I see what you're at. I see what you mean. Yeah. Shit. Something to think about. No, because I've never really thought about, like, my own media consumption and whether I would have more agency than I do. But I just decide that my agency is not through my media habits, but through my interaction with people every day, which, maybe it's much smaller, but I love the cartoons on the internet. I love the cartoons and occasional news stuff I'll watch, but nothing insane. Anyway.
No podcasts?
I'll watch snippets of podcasts, and then
but not full episodes.
But if a friend is extremely excited by the podcast.
Oh, I have quite a few.
Then I will watch more than a little bit.
I have a few for your flight.
Oh my God.
You'll love it. All right, let's keep moving.
All right.
Let's see what else ChatGPT has for you to uncover. We're still in the memetics.
Oh, memetics. Okay. Like the making of memes.
Right, and the spread of ideas.
Gotcha.
Are there certain ideas or trends that act like mind viruses, spreading fast but doing damage in the long run? I would think back recently, right, in the news cycle, the issue with the in the Middle East, in the Holy Lands, right, where Hamas and Israel, we got different reporting from the New York Times about a bombing in a parking lot. Do you remember that?
I think so, yeah.
And it turns out that it was all kind of wrong. There was a bomb, it went off.
But where
it didn't hit the hospital as the report had claimed. It actually hit the parking lot, and so nobody was really severely injured. I mean, maybe somebody past, but we were really fast to jump on it. Recently, I was listening to another podcast where influencers, especially on, like, let's say X, are incentivized by getting paid, right, for pushing out content, so long as it's viral. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Just so long as it has clicks, it's got movement, and it's got traction, you're going to receive some coin for it. Right? And so it doesn't matter where on the aisle you sit, so long as you're able to stir up a fucking fire.
Well, a situation where your media infrastructure rewards the mere circulation of ideas for the sake of circulation of ideas,
but that's
a problem.
That's where we're at.
Now, that could be said independently of any particular kind of geopolitical crisis.
And it's not just X. It's
Fair.
Instagram, it's YouTube, it's TikTok,
Sure.
it's Rumble, it's whatever you want to pick.
Well, maybe.
Pick your pie. And
I see.
That's kind of that's the incentive ultimately.
I haven't thought too much. I admit, this is maybe where your expertise comes in, but I admit I haven't thought too much about our mainstream platforms. But any kind of criticism, I think, of a culture where the mere circulation of ideas is itself rewarded,
right,
is something to be worried about. I would agree with that. And I think that would apply not only in, the media infrastructure, but as a cultural problem, also in institutions, in educational institutions.
Right.
And so, the idea that the mere circulation of, mere citations, for instance, which is an important metric for academic,
one of the most important,
academic kind of
citing
output.
your sources for your primary sources.
Right. Yes. So on one hand, it's an important practice of justification and verification of an idea, but the mere circulation of the ideas doesn't add to the truth content of the idea.
Because if you're in a centralized system, let's say let's look at like medical academia, right? You're finishing your doctorate. You're now trying to get into the university so that you could potentially open up a lab. You have this new field of study that you want to open, but for some reason, your science goes against mainstream big pharma.
I think, but true. But then the trick would be, so then a strategy then, when you realize that your innovative science or view on science is pushing up against, centralized situations. Then you have two, or you at least two views. One, you could continue on you could go and be a polemical outsider, or you could decide to very deftly and carefully engage in the dance of being part of the institution, understanding the institution, trying to, appreciate what good of existing science or knowledge there is, and, trying out. But I think that's possible. I think that's at least it's possible to do.
But you need the coin. You need the money for the lab.
True, but right. So why? But need it be a large lab? Need it be a large lab? No. Could it be a lab that's part of someone else's lab? You know what I mean?
But you're on the precipice of a breakthrough.
Maybe. Sure.
And you need, now, because you're on that precipice, that this thing is going to require $25 million for the next 3 years, every single year.
Yes.
But you know it because you know that the math is there.
That's fair.
And so now you need to go to the university that has the money, seek the money from the endowment, but immediately you're cut off because your thinking is not in line. It doesn't fall in these cited sources that you're going to have to do. And if you need these peer review, no one else is going to want to peer review it.
True.
Because if they do it, their ass is on the line and they don't get the money either.
True. But, I think then the trick becomes, I advocate in this case for, it's so cheesy and embarrassing, sue me, epistemic humility. I think the trick would then be, okay, this needs $20 million
every year for the next 3 years.
Well, then how about we start?
25.
Let's start with something that would only need 3,000.
No, but you're already there. Like, you already know.
Me personally, what I would do, I
Yeah.
already know that this is the breakthrough. I will put it in my special breakthrough box. And I'll take a piece of it that I know the rest of the people will understand. And then it's okay, let's do what we can with this. And it may well be that even the little piece from my breakthrough box will make a big impact. But turns out I got way more breakthroughs. Want to know more where that came from?
Right.
I got more cookies in the cookie jar.
Right.
Some people can't take all the cookies. Some people don't want all your cookies, not all at the same time. Like your $20 million cookies. Not everybody wants your $20 million cookies all at the same time. So just give them some cookies. Let them know what you got. That's my view, at least in terms of with knowledge in the sciences.
And so then,
and whatever form of inquiry, yada yada yada, blah blah blah.
Dr. Becker, who was a doctor in the 60s, 70s, was on that route, and he went to the university seeking more money. He was already ingrained and institutionalized from the VA, but he needed more funding, and that's when they said, no, you've gone too far, you're pushing a little too much. And so then he said, okay, fine, I'm going to take one of the cookies from my cookie jar, and I'm going to feed it to 60 Minutes. And 60 Minutes gobbled that shit up. And then he got canceled. All of his work completely gone.
I don't.
No longer part of
the
the funding source.
Yeah, let's think about a case. So I'm trying to think. I would like to step back and think of it as like a more general case about how facts are born and evolve, and then help us engage in understanding the truth or true kinds of ways the world is.
Yeah.
So like, I would say I would not have taken it to 60 Minutes. Or to some sort of media platform. No.
That was the source at the time.
But sure, but I would like, but take it to a different journal. Try and publish it in a journal. Try publishing it in a small scientific forum. Present it at a paper at a conference. Get people sort of around the idea. See what people, if they recognize, like, wait a minute, I recognize this as a version of something that I was doing before. Then it shows that your epistemic humility is not just for the sake of punishing yourself, but because you know that you're part of a community. Right. And that's what I would like. That to me is an ethic I would like to see, and at least try and practice myself. So anyway, you were right. And so so that's the thing with like any information sharing in the time of a crisis.
But what you're saying,
the breakthrough is not important. What's important is the community being able to collaborate together. And that we're all on the same team, or that we're on enough of the same team.
And if you remember, right after 9/11,
all right,
how was this country? We were so unified.
Unification. Okay, now
we were ready. We were ready.
You're kind of pointing a risk out. Yeah, go on.
Right. And as an entire society here, we were very. Hey, check out the possum.
The possum is interested.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
The possum wants to be in on the podcast. Right. Well, no, on this point, okay, so I think
you see where this is going.
I see where you're taking it. The possum's arrival was very
adequate,
very timing, very well timed, because
it is a possum,
right? No, it's a possum. The possum sort of appear. No, but it's like not everybody is in on the program. We're recording a podcast, and the possum just pops up, says, "Hey guys, well, what's up?" Anyway, I'm kidding, but no, seriously, like as for the evolving set of security imperatives. People dispute about what kind of value ultimates or what sort of like things are willing to hold the line on.
Yeah.
Those shift. And they're also disputed at the time that they are begin to be argued. So not everybody agreed that right when Colin Powell went up to the UN and saying the weapons of mass destruction, we need basically the coalition of the willing kind of argument. Not everybody bought it. Not everybody, exactly really thought that the kind of intervention, or at least the kind and scale that we had been hoping was what really had to be done. Some people were claiming it was an illegal war. Blah 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 blah. Point being, is even if there's a national sentiment of unified in the tragedy, the strategy that should follow from that, people, have had and have reasonable disagreements about, I think. But I think you're right, though, about when you're pointing this out in relation to what I was talking about, like, oh, what does the community think? Mm-hmm. You're kind of pointing out a risk about unification.
That's how we get the community.
Yeah,
to coddle around an idea.
Yeah.
We can really pull at those heartstrings.
It's possible, right? But no,
5,000-6,000 people were killed.
Yeah. Yes. But I think the two cases of a national response to a tragedy and the introduction of a breakthrough in science, while they both relate to like group dynamics, the group dynamic of the introduction of scientific ideas seems to me to be more about collaboration and verification of experimental data and the kinds of givens that are already part of the scientific community in relation to that experimental data. But the case of the response to a national tragedy, that is actually something I need to think more about.
What about
it seems like something a little bit different, I think.
What about let's connect the two now.
Oh yeah, fair.
So you're saying a national response with a new scientific breakthrough. The last time we had that was the pandemic.
Oh, right.
Where Massachusetts is headquarters of Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, MIT, Boston, and that's where all of the science for the mRNA vaccine originated. But that's the community, though.
Well, that's
No.
community. Well, no, wait a minute. Because now I don't think this is true of science generally. It may be that there are certain sites that are specialists. But I would say think about other diseases like cancer, treating cancer, or syphilis. I don't know. Plug in your disease of many different kinds that, seems to be moving about in a population. Syphilis, of course, is contagious, and cancer is a different kind of operates differently.
Cancer's a new disease.
Well, actually, there's a really cool book on this. Emperor of All Maladies by Siddhartha Mukherjee. It's about a history of cancer. And there were doctors in antiquity who observed cancer, and they found there was no cure for it then. And over time, people, from antiquity up to, 1700s, thought that, like different degrees of course, excising the cancer was how do you solve it's a great book. We don't have to get into that. Point being is, like, I think you're right to be thinking about, isn't it odd when there's when a certain specialty in a disease, in treatment of a disease, isn't located in one place. I would agree with that, because I think it should be more diffuse. It should be more diffuse to make better treatments. Anyway, that's all I got about the COVID stuff. But I see where you're going, though, about, are we unsurprised that, Pfizer and whatnot, there's a certain
Moderna.
Locus of treatment and a certain locus of knowledge about the disease. Like, are we, it's an interesting problem, but I don't know. That's all I got. I think it's interesting.
Next question.
Yeah, sure. That's really cool. There's a lot to think about.
Social media psychology.
Oh, Lord.
Do you think social media is messing with our brains? Like, are we addicted to the wrong kind of dopamine?
Well, people sitting around the radio. There's also social media. You call in. Social media.
Telemedia.
Huh?
Telemedia.
Yeah, sure. Like I called in a request recently to a college station. And they were playing music, and I was like, this is really great. Could you guys sort of in this theme, play, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, we're doing this right now, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, these little twerps. That was social media to me. Because society is in the media. If we're engaging with society in the media, okay. Is it making us dumb? Right? I guess. I don't know. That was dumb. What do I think about our intelligence and making us dumber, and are we addicted to the wrong kind of dopamine? I have not thought about this. I think, I have my personal habits. I'm not a TikTok user. I don't use TikTok, but I will use Instagram. I have a lot of people that I message through Instagram, so that's mostly what keeps me on Instagram. But if I could divorce the Instagram Messenger from the regular feed, I would, so I could just talk to people and then consume what they send me. But I can't even keep my default page to the messages. It shifts to the feed. So I have to make a conscious effort to just go to my messages if I'm feeling like talking to people. Mm. Why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant to making us dumber or not. Yeah, doom scrolling is a thing. We've all been victim of doom scrolling at certain hours of the day or at night, haven't we? So, we wake up and then we kind of just do it. So, right. Or before we go to bed, we do it, and it makes it hard to sleep. So that's everybody. Yeah, I get that. Well,
it's the blue light.
Yeah, I have blue light glasses. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, maybe, but there's really cool, fun facts. So, one of my folders in Instagram, or my saved folders, is language, fun, and fact. Because sometimes, like the History Channel will put something on, or Nature, or all these different publications or platforms that are relatively respectable. The Economist will have a fun piece, and I'll be like, "Ooh, that's interesting." Boop, saved. And then if I'm on, waiting at my gate, or waiting for a friend to come pick me up from a coffee shop, or if I'm waiting to pick someone up, I'll just scroll through my save folders like, that's cool, couple facts, fun facts, there you go, done. So I don't think it depends on how you use it. If you got a disposition to learn stuff, birds, yeah, that's funny, she's very loud. If you're dispositioned to learn stuff, then it's not making it dumber. But if your disposition is to consume, then you might be in trouble. That's all I got.
Okay.
Man, you're making me think. It's lower. That's great.
Are we actually listening to people online, or are we just stuck in echo chambers hearing what we want?
Okay, what do you think about? I want to hear what you think about this. What do you think about this? Are we only listening to people? Are we only listening to people? Are we actually listening to people, or are we only just in an echo chamber? Says the robot. No, but seriously, what do you think? Well,
immediately you saw me and you were like, all right, so where's your stance on Kendrick versus Drake?
That's not immediately what we talked about. Well, that's not immediately what we talked about.
Fine. We were eating.
There's
music playing, and you were just like Shazamming things.
Oh my God.
And
I love Shazam.
And then that came up, right? So
fair enough.
Where do I sit on that? I think that's a pretty dumb argument, whether or not, one's better than the other. They're both making bundles of money off of this, right? Both of them. So irrespective of that, like, okay, great. It's good for their label. It's good for them. It's good for their home media. It's fine. And now it just withered away. And now we don't talk about it, really. So you're the first person to come up to me to ask me that since the beef actually kind of ended this summer, right?
Yeah.
And that was only a stint for like 5-6 weeks, maybe a little more. But
yeah.
Regardless, personally, what do I think about all these kind of dopamine and influencers? Hopefully, whoever it is that you are listening to kind of challenge you. Because if it's the same thinking that you've always heard or you've kind of already used to, or you're hearing it at work, then I don't think you're really getting a greater benefit from being online in that sense, because you're not connecting with the other. You already know and live and are ingrained in whatever it is that you're already doing.
Yeah.
And so the biggest benefit you could be doing is trying to understand the other side.
I see. Yeah.
And so following accounts, media that you don't necessarily like, trust, and or believe in might actually help you gain to know that greater perspective.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, nobody does.
Right. Well, okay.
And so I took full advantage of it this election cycle by listening to the media sources and the people that I normally would not want to hear. And I did that just to kind of hear out what are the arguments. And in the end, really, it kind of ingrained my own beliefs far more. It solidified things that were maybe sitting on the back burner that I didn't really quite know what it is that I thought, that now all of a sudden I do have a stance, because I definitely don't agree with this and I don't agree with that. So I'm I'll find my own line, and then I'm able to now find new voices.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that is the best approach to social media. I'm well traveled in the sense that I have friends everywhere. And that's why I like social media. I don't necessarily need to want, or have to pick up the phone to call you. I get enough general satisfaction by just sending things. And social media is that one little outlet that I can do that. And I can keep all of my social connections globally, virtually on one app. Right? So it used to be complete utter chaos on WhatsApp. I hardly use WhatsApp. I generally don't use Messenger. I use Instagram, just like you're saying, to send out things and to find new ideas. So I'm constantly trying to change the people that I do listen to, who I follow, besides my group of friends, right? And then on top of that, I'm on X, I'm on Twitter, I'm just checking out all kinds of different coves of the internet to see what it is that I don't agree with or I don't like.
I see. Yeah.
And that helps kind of create my own thinking.
You got it. Yeah, I see. I can see, that you're trying from different angles, and, because you've always been like the person who likes to try the different things. It's like
I'm the contrarian.
Well, not the contrarian. Not about the contrarian. I don't mean about the contrarian, but it's like the same guy, because you're trying to get the end. You're trying to understand the engine of the internet.
Exactly.
The engine of social media.
That algorithm that's
right. And you're doing that by you're trying to reverse engineer it in a way by saying, okay, what are the different kinds of views?
Right.
So then I can see what of these different views is likely to really circulate and stick in the echo chambers. Like, if you look at different chambers, then you can understand more generally how a chamber functions.
100%.
So I understand why you do that. That makes sense to me.
You want to understand war? Well, go look at the pictures that they have of war.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to have a picture of a battlefield. You'd like to see a tank. You'd like to see a couple missiles, probably some smoke, fire.
Yeah.
Those images are going to do fantastically well on social media.
Yeah, but they're really... But then depends,
because they're so charged.
They're very charged. But then it's like, well,
what's the narrative now?
The narrative, and then the usage of those
and
images.
why was there a photographer there in the first place?
How did that photographer get there?
Now we're thinking.
Wonder. Well, of course, and I think that's a fair. And how do they get there? How do they survive? I guess, but we have war. We have war photographers. We have war photographers.
They were press.
And one hopes.
It's blue.
And we hope we're not out here killing press people.
Unless you're an ex-CIA Mossad or some other.
Oh, Lord. Ugh. Oy vey. Ugh. Ugh. Tell me about it. Ugh. Anyway. But, no, this is really something to think about.
That's what I think.
Yeah, I get it. Well, thank you for that. I was wondering what you were thinking.
And so, no, I think people do listen to influencers and get stuck in their web.
Getting stuck in the web of influencers.
So, I mean, the biggest one that I can immediately point out and know with certainty has kind of like moved social cohesion and beliefs. Kardashians literally created markets.
I plead the fifth on the Kardashians. Let them have it. I think they're great. I don't have anything to say. Literally, like, that's great that they're doing. I guess I'm so bad with this part of popular culture, of pop culture. I'm just like, who are these people again? I'm just kidding. But no, yeah, sure, of course. But like, people like Lady Diana, people like Princess Diana, people like Kim Kardashian. They're not the same. They're not equivalents, but they're part of the same domain of, oh, here's a very important person who has a personality, and we should get to know what their personality is and interests us.
Right.
What is Princess Diana wearing? What is Kim Kardashian wearing? Right? Like, cool. I say let people have it. I honestly, part of why I haven't thought so much about some of this, John, is like,
you don't have the time either.
well, yeah, no, I don't. But I also have just, my disposition is more like, let people enjoy life and consume. If you want to watch Mormon wives have at it at each other, like, that's actually really funny and fun. Like, if you want to watch documentaries about dolphins and nature, you should have that. If you want, for me, I'm like, I think I vibe with multiple kinds of ways of viewing the world, and a world where people enjoy the pop culture. It doesn't mean they're not conscious of it. Some people are be able to like, yeah, this media icon really is not doing anything original. People know that. Some people do, and some people don't. And, so just because people might really like pop culture. Oh, I have one friend who would totally write a whole dissertation on like pop culture, like parts of pop culture.
Right.
So I said, there's criticism. There's, like, people have it anyway. And then there's enjoyment, appreciation, thoughtfulness, and also just fun. Anyway, so I don't know. That's why I haven't really thought this much about like social media and like,
no, I hear
the
you.
Kardashians anyway.
But influencers are influencers.
Oh, right. That influence. Yes.
And so,
oh yeah, that part.
If Kim says or looks really hot in this dress,
you want the dress.
Or this new makeup that they're dropping.
You think that's bad?
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm only trying to highlight
fair.
The social fact that our fabric literally gets interwoven with what our influencers
that's right.
say, deem, and suggest are the latest, hottest, and the best.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, but
so go get your Botox filler, get your BBL.
Big
Brazilian butt lift. And go get your latest and greatest swimwear. It's winter season, so it's 50% off.
Yeah. That's funny. Shop now. See? Yeah, you'll get your Brazilian butt lift. It's
1999.
1999, your Brazilian butt lift.
7 payments.
No
interest for 12 months.
Oh my God, I remember those commercials. Aging myself. But yeah, let him have it. I mean, that's all I got. That's all I got about that.
Okay. Do you think scientists and tech leaders should step up more when it comes to shaping society, or is that too much power for one group to have?
Scientists and tech leaders shape society in different kinds of ways, but they're sufficiently similar to where I can see where the question has both of them. Sorry, that was a very bougie and needless way of responding to that question.
No.
Marie Curie is one thing, and Kendrick is another. A tech leader. Zuckerberg is another.
Hold on, Einstein.
Oh yes, Einstein, Marie Curie.
Yeah. We're in that vein of thinking, right?
Oh, I see what you mean.
So Israel initially, when they were forming as a state and a country, they wanted to have Einstein as the first prime minister, and he said, No, I know what you're trying to do. Because it's exactly what this question is.
Oh yeah, shaping society. Yeah. Well, look, his concerns about nuclear weaponry and peace, and didn't he become a figure of the peace movement? This is actually something I should spend more time about with Einstein's later life, as sort of a science diplomat. Is something to think about. But
I can send you a lot of stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Not just Einstein.
But like lots of scientists
Yeah.
who are sort of pro-peace, like pro-peace and stuff. I mean, or whatever. But
Or
like
anti.
Or anti, for sure. Yeah. Oh, and then Oppenheimer, of course. But so
we were talking about cancer, so there's an even deeper story that we'll save.
Yeah, no, for sure. But like, because then you could think about surgeons who like the late 1700s, early mid 1800s. This is a long time scale. Thought you should have more radical surgery when dealing with cancer. Sorry, this is all in the Emperor of All Maladies book. It's a really great one. Won a Pulitzer for a reason.
Cancer doesn't take off, right, as a real disease, mainstream, until like late 1950s, 1960s.
So you're right. So there people
you could see cancer in patients, and famously you could read up a bunch of doctors who would say they saw lung cancer in like 1921, and they're like, this is 1 in 100 million. This is never going to happen. And then boom, 60 years later, leading cause of death.
Yeah, people. Yeah.
So if you follow
the author talks about that.
You follow that
book talks about
that stream of where that happened.
The concentration of it. Yeah.
You end up kind of in the 1950s, 1960s, and boom, this thing takes off.
Yeah, I think prior to cancer, people tended to think about tuberculosis,
polio,
polio.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Yeah, there's others. Anyway, so it's like this is actually where some philosophers of science are really useful here, because there's different stages of medical history where particular kinds of diseases have people take it as like a sort of a moral campaign against this disease.
Sure. We're like today, currently.
Yeah. Cancer is one of those.
Cancer is the largest research in science.
Absolutely.
Like that's where the money is.
Yep.
But where was I trying to go with this?
Oh no, we're talking about like a variety of influence of science in society.
I forgot my point.
No, but that's a really good point. No, but well, I think you had made it. I can see why, because you kind of really made a good one. I mean, so the scientists' role, because they deal with medicine, because they deal with biochemical discoveries and biomedical discoveries, or because they engage in environmental work or in ecological work or about human development, all these in cognition, blah, 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 blah. All this is great, right? And that their knowledge, we hope, contributes to, general improvement about the world. But it's also the case that, death is part of life, which is sort of obvious, intuitive, and trivial to say.
That's where I was going.
But it's like we can't conquer death, right? Like that's not how. Like, we don't have that power.
Well, that's where this cancer story, where I'm saying kind of takes off, is under. We're trying to do research for cures to polio, and we end up using what's called a simian virus. Have you ever heard of this? No?
Go on.
Where we're using, I believe it's the liver or the kidney of a chimp, and we're developing the polio, and we're realizing there's some chemical things that happen out of this monkey that could actually be beneficial to help polio. But there's also a split, right, chemically, where we end up creating this new thing called SV40. And if we dig into today's current issue, right, with COVID, we're seeing that in these vials, they're seeing trace amounts of this simian virus 40. And the 40 stands for there were 39 other trials that didn't work until we got to this one. Yeah, and this 40, right, is so deadly that it causes cancer.
I've never thought about
There's some names I can throw at you.
Well, no. So I think
but
I think you're onto something. Just general. I look as to whatever offshoots from different cancer studies. I think is another conversation. And not something I'm really equipped to talk about.
No. But the echo chamber. We're talking about the echo chambers.
Right, yeah.
And this echo chamber that I'm trying to highlight here, at least in this science chasm that we're in,
Sure, yeah.
is really for cancer, for all of the research that we end up moving forward, the next 40, 50, 60, 100 years also moving forward. A lot of it's coming from this gain of function research. And this gain of function is really gain of how do we kill you faster.
Well, because you have to kill the cancer. You have to
not just cancer,
or sort of tissue. You have to treat tissue in a way, right? But
so we're doing research to try to figure out how we can kill you faster, so that we can then understand what might kill you. We need to stop it with this. That's the whole gain of function.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see what you mean. That's interesting. And so there you go. So I mean, so science and tech leaders involved in sort of in society. Well, there's some biomedical research that's already part of this story, but then there's some stuff that's not intuitively or obviously about it. Like, I mean, different ways of how to prevent cement from cracking, to do experiments on how to make cement more durable, right? Is like not, well, it's not obviously, well, I guess it is sort of obviously related. It's science, it's engineering science, but like, okay, it's chemical. It's chemical. It's okay. And then like, all right, well then how do we know improvements of science? Like, well, in a way, the current capacity of cement to crack, or for it not to be the same, the way we eventually have to break it down, we might want to repair, or like maybe we might want to replace. There you go. We want to replace what sort of cement structures we have. So you don't want something that's indestructible. Anyway, so the obvious. Mine. Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. So it's not always obvious what kind of benefits there are from certain potential scientific breakthroughs. Like, oh great, I've figured out how to make indestructible cement. Well, why would I want indestructible cement? I would want durable cement, but I don't know if I want indestructible cement. I need to be able to replace it eventually, don't I? Like, ooh.
Only molten core lava can break it.
Right, like, I guess, right? Like, like, it's like this is so to be insane. Like, now I got to get molten core lava to break this so-called indestructible cement.
Send it to Hawaii.
This is terrible. That'd be a terrible idea, right? Anyway, so there's some scientific breakthroughs. See, now this is actually something. Okay, now here we go. This takes it back to what you were talking about earlier. Like, all right, great. Someone has this breakthrough. Like,
yes,
scientific and everything. The scientific community, like, it gets this guy comes around like, I've discovered how to make indestructible cement. Only molten lava could destroy it. We're like, okay,
I only need $65 million more.
Right, like, but this is already huge. Okay, if this is what you're telling us, so then great. But like, maybe we could find smaller usages for this than entire highways. Maybe we don't need to bring molten lava to highways. In order to break the highway, in order to replace or shift the highway, we would then need to bring molten lava to that's crazy. You see what I mean? So it's like,
and then 20 years later, we learned that Godzilla is real,
right? And that he was able to break so Godzilla or the molten lava would be the only thing, right? Like, there's just certain scientific nominally possible scientific breakthroughs that we don't really need, but some we most certainly need. I guess. Anyway. No, so I just wanted to bring back the question that you'd had about, the question, but the thing about like, an innovation that comes in and then gets rejected. Well, there might be good reasons why it gets rejected, no matter how cool of an idea.
And then you find out, no, that's your dude.
Thank you.
And then you find out that the leading endowment for the science department is none other than John Deere, and or Cat, or name your big destructive company that they don't want to see this non-breakable cement.
Well,
and so now we just put that cookie into the cookies that will never see the light of day pile.
Well, I don't know. In this sort of diabolical thought experiment, I'm enjoying this diabolical thought experiment.
Yeah, as you should.
One example would be, why wouldn't the competitor just buy it?
Why wouldn't they just buy it? They could, but why wouldn't they? Maybe they have other products that are more important and other sort of employment lines that are important. I don't know. These are questions I've not thought about.
Foresight to know that that's your big enemy moving forward.
Conceivably, own shares. You might want to just own some shares of it and be part of for board making decisions for it. But not only, right? I mean, but that's sort of weird. I'm not sure if you can do that.
Only if it's a public company and it has to go through lots of stuff to do that.
Something I don't really think that much about trading and whatnot. But I'm pretty sure there's good antitrust reasons for why the small guy.
Why Facebook shouldn't own Instagram? What?
Well, no, I meant for
WhatsApp.
I meant for why the small
VR. What?
No, for the small concrete.
Oh, we're still there.
The innovation of concrete. Yeah, because I'm trying to pull a through line because I was kind of interested because you don't just say shit. You bring stuff up that's John. You say stuff that's interesting. I'm like, I got to think about.
All right, fine. So you take your cement slab to Shark Tank. This is indestructible.
And then they're just like, why do I need this indestructible cement?
They're
there might be some things I need this for, but other things I don't need this for. Yeah, and so then
2 weeks later, the guy's shot.
And then he's gone because he eliminated the competition. Well, that's anti-competitive behavior, and there's antitrust reasons for why that's unacceptable.
Or he's out on a boat, and his boat gets water spit, and the freak accident is...
Somehow it's like, it's so very curious after his experience on Shark Tank, he disappeared. Welcome back to 48 Hours Mystery. Right? Like, it's so weird. That'd be so funny. Oh my gosh. Anyway, what else you got for me?
All right, keep this going.
Yeah, why not?
All right. What's your take on how ideas spread in universities?
Oh my God.
How are some things catching on because they're true or just because they're trendy?
True and trendy ideas in the academy.
I'll just say the next question. Is
Sure,
academia becoming a breeding ground for groupthink?
Is academia becoming a breeding ground for groupthink?
Or
oh my God.
Is it that just people online are being overtly dramatic?
People online are being overly dramatic.
Oh.
But I will say, though, that trendy ideas in the academy happen, and we learn to work with it.
Like what happened at Harvard and what was it? Pennsylvania?
Yeah. What about them?
When they were testifying in front of Congress?
That's complicated. Yeah, Harvard, Penn, and MIT. Yeah, that testimony
there it
is
is.
Really interesting. Well, no. So, about ideas that are trendy.
It was a very popular idea to say that you were plagiarizing. And we could use that to axe you.
Yeah, but I think something even more would be like...
I'm just making jokes.
No, I think it's funny. No, it's funny, and I'm just thinking about it. The reason why it's funny is because it's getting at something that's true, or possibly true. And so I'm just trying to think how far we go with it. Well, okay, like I
mean, we already brought Godzilla into it, so
we did bring Godzilla. Okay, so let's say Godzilla Studies. Let us say we create a field, Godzilla Studies, and then we start saying that lots of things are lots of things are Godzillas.
We really need to study how he feels and how he thinks about it.
There you go. So one school of Godzilla Studies is interested. What is the intersubjectivity? Right. What's the inner subjectivity of Godzilla? What is it that drives him to do all this destruction?
And then we learn that his fire flame capability comes from his testicles.
Then that's an interesting biomedical discovery.
And it only happens.
And might tell us about many other lizards.
It only happens when he comes out of water. And it only charges up when he's in water.
But there you go, great. So then, then that becomes part of a security imperative.
Right.
Now if we can get him out of water long enough, he will exhaust his powers.
So I need to buy a bunch of Komodo dragons before they start running tests on them.
So there you go, a trendy idea.
And they become an endangered species like overnight.
So let's say
because of Godzilla Studies.
So let us imagine that would be an example of a trendy idea, but that would have lots of implication for the rest of our auxiliary fields.
And then Tokyo
psychology,
really
security studies, huh?
I said then Tokyo gets really mad.
Then Tokyo was mad because they had the ownership of Godzilla Studies first.
That was their IP.
Godzilla came to us first. But
Right.
it's like, well, wait a minute, we need to scale. Is it scalable? Right? See, no, there's a grammar. That's funny. There's a grammar to the way that ideas circulate and the way that we ask about intervention, about blah blah blah. But whether the grammar is a sensical contains sensical statements or not, or sensible statements, is a really interesting analytic problem. But yeah, so I just think, so yeah, of course, there's trendy ideas in the academy, but peer review as well as the classroom and public response kind of help us understand if something's going a little too far. It's one thing to, like, for Godzilla Studies to just go into fiction, just stay in the fiction department. We're interested in studying literature and the Godzilla trope and what the Godzilla trope.
That's the Loch Neck monster,
Right.
in the English department, and don't get him confused.
Right, absolutely.
He's Irish.
Yeah, right, absolutely. And so actually, so one could conceive, right? No, because we have cinema about it. We have all this. So you could conceivably have a Godzilla Studies department, right? Great. Like, not Godzilla Studies department. It would just be part of, like, your fiction, science fiction,
Zoology?
dystopian. Yeah, it would be part of a broader domain, because what would be interesting about Godzilla Studies, I know this is so crazy, but if you're talking about the grammar of how you build a program in the academy, right, you have to see that it belongs to a broader domain first. And the broader domain that that sort of Godzilla, research would be involved in would be like dystopian science fiction. Dystopian science fiction actually has a really important place in the study of literature.
Sure.
Which I think is obviously intuitive. Point being, though, is like, but to say that there should be an entire department dedicated to the study of Godzilla, that's insane. But if you instead sort of leverage Godzilla to help us think about science fiction more generally, then that's cool. And then maybe even a little bit about society. Like, why is Godzilla 1, which I think tells us a lot, which has a lot about, like, the fighter pilots. That's really cool. That's very different than a Godzilla that's just focused on the lizard himself. Right? Like, I know, right? Like, and then there's a turn, like, but now people might say, go back to the lizard itself.
The lizard in the mirror.
The lizard in the mirror, right? Now we need the lizard in the mirror. Okay, now that's just like, okay, now at that point, it's like, okay, how much farther do we need? How much farther do we need to go then for this? Anyway, so it's like,
And then the British Museum
has an exhibit on Godzilla.
No, say,
Yeah.
this is sacrilege. Shut it down.
We should be focusing on the
So-
Loch Ness.
So this tiny little school that now has this Godzilla department
Oh my God.
now gets stomped
Okay,
by
well,
the British
all right.
Museum because
Well-
they say we have the bones first.
Oh my God. Oh my God. This is all possible. This is all possible.
Ironically,
But it's I'm sure, but like if you abstract this from Godzilla but to some other field of knowledge, and you then change it to something that's sensible instead of something that's nonsense, then then we are kind of in the problem of what it means for ideas to circulate and then to be trendy versus true and blah 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 blah.
so here's a fun one.
Yeah.
We had some fried chicken.
Oh Lord. With waffle.
That's
And coleslaw.
That's probably how
Very tasty.
dinosaurs used to taste.
Oh my God.
'Cause
not with chili honey and waffles. I'm sorry,
chicken-
chili honey and waffles are thoroughly modern inventions, as far as I understand. I'm sorry to tell you. But chicken, well, it's quite tasty, I must say. I apologize for how much I enjoyed that fried chicken.
Yeah, you went ham on that thing.
Oh my God. Oh, how are we doing?
Why do you think anxiety and depression are blowing up right now? Is it something new
Oh, it's not new.
or just something we're finally noticing?
I think it's a combination of both. There might be a higher scale.
Interesting how it's implying that it's nothing. It's old and new.
Yeah, is it old or is it new? Like, it might be it might be a both. I think this might be a both and thing, that there's more of a scale and we are paying more attention to it. So it's not new, but there's just more of it and we are spending more time thinking about it. That's all I got.
Can I give you some real fun science?
Sure, I don't know. Ooh, what?
Okay. In Angola, they don't have a word for autism.
You might have a word for something else for similar behavior. But go on. What?
Not quite. They do not.
If you gave... Okay, this is actually really helpful.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, listen. I'm
no,
sorry.
go with your...
No, you go.
You go.
You go.
Hold on. You're on something.
I can wait.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the last few years, like in the last decade, we've seen a migration of people from Angola, because they have a war going on, moving to, ironically, this weird place called Detroit, Michigan. And here's what's weird. These immigrants that are moving, that didn't have a word for autism, that are now in Detroit, Michigan, that are now having children, we're seeing lots of autism. Why might that be?
Okay, so... the spectrum is a complicated subject.
The spectrum.
The spectrum is a complicated subject, and not one I'm really that qualified to.
No.
I'm not really equipped to talk about.
I have the answer. But
I think at least a probability. I want to hear your answer back.
Yeah.
Let me just thinking through this.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking
please.
through this for a second. I think a probability might be that were you to say what the behaviors, if you were a person who didn't have the vocabulary, or at least just the word autism, but there were sets of behaviors that you thought were curious and you wanted to be able to describe them as something, you might have had another word for it, but not autism. Or you didn't have a word for it at all because you just thought, oh, that's just behavior. Some people are like that. And then an outsider comes in like, don't you think we should have a name for this? Then they introduce a name.
okay.
If there's a mutual intelligibility between the symptom class of the outside viewer and the insider, well, that's sort of an interesting problem. Then the only question becomes is just the lexicon or
Right.
the word.
Okay.
Now, if we're saying instead, and this is so that's one thing. I have no clue about what to say about a situation where basically, autism is invented. Like any set of conditions that works for the argument that autism is an invention or a social construct only and entirely, I don't know if I could follow that line of argument.
Okay.
I could follow a line of argument where people might be more disposed to recognize a set of symptoms, and now that they have a word for it, when they move to a new domain, they would apply that. Then that's interesting, but that's as far as I get.
Okay.
But what were you gonna say?
So here's the reason why.
Yeah.
You know about the equator, right?
It's the line that we drew. The line that we drew around the Earth. Yeah, sure.
But specifically, it's where the sun beams
Well, yes.
the hottest
Well, yes.
and the closest.
Right, and because of that, we drew a line.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Angola is way below that. Not way below, but it's like just below that
Okay.
that line.
Uh-huh.
So the sun that you get in Angola is very, 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 very strong.
Oh, is this like a seasonal affective disorder question?
Not a seasonal thing. It's literally a light issue. It's a spectrum issue, like you called it.
Oh, that's funny. Like the spectrum. Well, no,
because
yeah,
we now move from the bottom, right, of just below the equator,
yeah,
to now Detroit, Michigan, which is like I think on the 42nd latitude, maybe even a little higher.
way up there. Yeah.
And you don't get the same kind of sunlight. Here's a little tidbit about science. Where
That's funny.
we're making adaptations.
Yeah. Wait, but
Hold
okay.
on. I'll highlight it through.
Yeah.
But just as another example, diabetes is actually a mutation that helps us survive at higher and higher altitudes. Because now we need simple sugar, right? because we're no longer getting as much sunlight as we should, our body is able to turn carbohydrates into a simple sugar that we can quickly and very, very quickly
And so then all that diabetes,
absorb.
and all the diabetes has done is become a mutation of that.
And so now, because we're not getting enough sunlight,
We don't process the simple sugars the same way.
and especially if you're somebody who's from like Scandinavia, and that's where your family's origin, comes from, you're more predisposed to having diabetes because of that sun, in that sense, because you're supposed to be living in that climate. If we now move you somewhere else,
Oh, this is the interaction. This is the problem with the interaction of the genome and society.
not
or
just
social-
the not
or
just
sort
the
of
genome, but
environmental,
it's at
the
a
body, the entire sort of the body and adaptation.
at a
selection.
mitochondrial level.
Oh, sure, that's interesting.
And so there's no word for it in Angola because the sun is so damn hot that you don't get autism. We now move this population that's used to this kind of UV light into an area that doesn't receive that amount of
Some
energy.
kind of
And now all of a sudden,
adaptation is happening.
they're getting autism. That's the science.
I mean, I'd like to look.
I'll send you the
that. I mean,
papers.
send me the papers, sure. I mean, but it's just like, to me, it seems
You don't think that they're connected? It's a little...
there's multiple. I'm sure that the reason why I'm skeptical of the claim is
Yeah,
because of a hyper determinist structural determinant of health framework.
Okay.
I don't know if that degree of structural determinism about health is, or of human conditions,
Are connected that much to the sun?
yeah, we can't isolate it just to that. And then what does that help us? What are we going to? Is the answer then to the treatment of these sort of displaced persons? Who shift, these equator shifters. Is the answer then sun treatment? We put them in sun chambers.
Yes. Ironically enough, kind of. That's kind of the answer. But that's for another pod.
Yeah. I have not thought about this.
I know.
Between thinking about sun treatment for autism and Godzilla studies, I would rather talk about Godzilla studies.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
Moving down.
Can we take a break?
You want to take a break?
Let's take a break.
All right, you got to be a principal. Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
If you were designing a school for the future, what's the one subject that you'd make mandatory that doesn't get enough attention today? It's okay, you don't have to say it. Godzilla Studies. We already said.
I tried to say Godzilla studies. Godzilla's. I want to print them. I want people to.
I got my doctorate in Godzilla
Mandatory
Studies.
would be poetry, because once you get kids learning poetry,
Love that.
then you can get them to make speeches, and you can make them to think about language and good writing
And memory.
and memory. So there you go. That's one thing for sure. Done.
Oh, all right, we're jumping. Are we preparing students for the real world, or are we just teaching them to follow the script?
Combination of both. The real world is made of scripts, so we teach them how to use scripts. But as long as we can teach them to work off script as well, then I think we prepared them. Next. Rapid fire. This is turning into a rapid fire. It's the cigarettes.
We might do all of them then.
Oh, great.
Do you think we're ready for the big risks coming our way? AI taking over, climate change, or even something like another pandemic?
We are if we work together. I think we learned quite a bit these past years. And so then the trick becomes that when the crisis emerges, if there's an acute crisis as opposed to just a disorienting period crisis type situation. In the acute situation, as long as we sort of are able to mobilize what we learned prior, I think we are good. That's at least for the pandemic. AI taking over, I think, is a bit of a farce. I don't really believe that AI is going to take over.
Okay.
But as for climate change, that's a tougher one. We have to really decide to encourage our leadership to trust what the scientific community and advocates and diplomats are saying about the ongoing sort of ecological changes and what agency we might have in that. That's all I got. Thanks.
Are we thinking too small about the problems facing humanity, or are we just too distracted to care?
Both. Didn't mean to yell. This is a both and response, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we're both distracted and we're thinking too small. But what solutions we have, I don't know. I have no answer for that.
Do you think the way we're educating people right now is killing creativity? How do you stay creative in a world that loves conformity?
Staying creative. So now, who made these questions?
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT is going. It seems to me to be going through going through an adolescent phase right now. Now it's going through. How do we make sure we don't stay conformist, man?
All right.
That's what it's giving me. But it's not that
Rebel teenage vibes.
It's giving rebel teenage vibes. It's like, how do we know we're not staying conformist, man?
Screw you, Dad.
Screw you, Dad. Screw you, Siri. You're not my mom, but I am your mother. Okay. How to stay creative. Be open to risk. Be open to risk and failure. That's how you stay creative. And knowing that you're not going to be perfect, but that you can still make stuff that's worthwhile. Which brings us back to music, I think. Music is like that, especially if you have to learn to improvise. Yeah, that's what I got.
What's the balance between teaching someone how to think and just telling them what to think?
Teaching them what to think is you assess them based off of their comprehension of particular texts and their memory recall of the texts. But when you do that, you're also encouraging them to to learn by memory and to comprehend texts generally. So there's a balance in transmitting knowledge. You already then teach them how to receive knowledge. But then, if you're only dealing with that, not encouraging them to create texts, even if they create texts that people are likely to make, then you're only teaching them how to receive. So that's an interesting difference between how to help someone think, or like helping someone learn how to think and then what to think. Is, are you only making them consume versus are you encouraging them to be critical of the world as they understand it and to improve the ways that they understand the world? That's a good question.
Do you think elite schools like yours are actually making the world a better place, or are they just reinforcing the power structures that already exist?
It's both, because sometimes making the world a better place does come from, in some situations, a top-down. There are some kinds of problems that are top-down problems that have to be fixed top-down.
Yeah. But
then there are some problems that begin somewhere in the middle, that bottom-up solutions are actually much better, and elite institutions won't do very good with them. But if there are a set of solutions that can be solved among elites because the elites created them, then yes, we are doing a good thing. But there are some problems that elites create that are bottom-up solutions. And I think that institutions like mine are well positioned to solve the top-down problems that can be solved by top-down problems, because I think we're really elite institutions are elite because they're good at what they do, as well as they have money. But I also think that the faculty that I know really are trying to, sincerely are really trying to impugn good values and encourage creativity, but also know that students have to get jobs, and they get jobs that are reliable for the kind of pedigree that they get, which are, elite type jobs, consultants and blah, blah, blah firms and blah, 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 blah. And then they make money and they become donors, and then they hope, right, to contribute to good programs and blah, blah. The cycle continues, right?
We need the money for the Godzilla lab.
Right, exactly. For Godzilla, the money for Godzilla Studies. Who am I going to get money for Godzilla Studies except for the students who have all the money? No, but I think it's a both and. I think that we both reinforce hierarchy, and that is a problem, which is why we should have, good outreach and support for other kinds of students. But we don't only do that. I think we actually do contribute to the good. So.
What do you say to someone who thinks these elite universities are out of touch with the real world?
Play some pool. I would play some pool with them.
Play some pool with them.
Let's play some pool. Let's play some pool, have some beer.
Right.
Have a cig out back and talk.
Right.
Let's see what you feel.
Okay. How does your institution integrate cutting-edge quantum biology research into its curriculum, or is it stuck in the 20th century models of health?
Quantum biology. Okay, so I am not an expert in this field. So the most I can guess is that once you start talking about quantum, you're dealing with fields of probability. Once you're dealing with probability fields, you then need computational powers to account for what should stay constant, even given certain kinds of probabilities versus others, which are more sort of higher degree variable situations. That's all I got. I'm about whenever we say quantum anything. As for my departments, I would have to get in touch with the folks in our biomedical field. I do not know, but I would think that that a relative pushing of the boundary of the standard model is good to be at, but I think a full-throated embrace of quantum biology might lose some of the higher level structures that are interesting in biological research, because at a certain level we have to think about how particular probabilities become acute, solid or relative solid probabilities, and not only sort of near infinite probabilities. But that's just more of on the philosophical point. I couldn't answer anything beyond that.
Fair.
That's a really interesting question about quantum biology.
Do you think academia is doing enough to address the impact of artificial light and non-native EMF on health, or is this a blind spot in modern science?
Artificial light,
non-native
and EMF, non-native artificial light and electromagnetic field. What?
EMF. Non-native EMF.
Non-native EMF.
And artificial light, like blue lights.
Blue light. Blue light. Oh yeah, interesting. EMF is electromagnetic. What? FS. I don't know what the F is. I don't know anything about this field.
Field.
Oh, fields.
For frequency.
Frequency. Oh, anyway.
Yeah. EMF.
Yeah, this I don't know. Electromagnetic frequency and artificial light is not something I've really thought about, or do I know people who work on this? I could ask some people in the physics department about this, but I don't really know anything about it. Only thing I've thought about is electromagnetic interference in imaging. There's a lot to be done about with electron microscopy, you want to do electron microscopy because you want higher imaging quality. But, if there's an electromagnetic field that can create interference, then that's a problem for your research.
Right.
But beyond that, that's the only thing I've ever thought about. That's the only thing I've happened to accidentally, just by accident, think about. But I'm not a scientist. I don't work in that.
No, I know.
Branch of science. Yeah, anyway.
I'm just giving you the questions.
That's GPT. GPT is asking these questions. That's hilarious.
Remember, I kind of guided it.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
So we're out of the science. With the rise of the decentralized platforms and access to independent research, are elite schools still relevant, or is it just a badge of prestige now?
They're relevant because of the character formation one would hope happens. Research does not always translate into the classroom either.
Right.
So the classroom is a unique space. And if you care about pedagogy, then you would never think that research is the and only the differentiating factor in quality in education. That's really good. Yeah, these are really good questions. you know, and you ask them in great, interesting ways. Other people would ask what GPT has said in a way that's not helpful, but you're kind of asking them in ways that are helpful for some reason to me, maybe, which is, anyway, whatever.
How do you balance theoretical teaching with actionable knowledge that
That is
actually
hard.
improves health?
So, you know, Paul Farmer was good on this.
Okay.
He died recently, but he was all about the global health advocacy question,
Sure.
and he was interested in structural change and not only treating particular conditions, sort of particular diseases. And he talked a lot about pragmatic solidarity, that no one asks only for you to suffer with them, but to alleviate suffering. And if the suffering is partially because of systemic issues, like if there's a bunch of people in a prison who have a recurring tuberculosis condition, well, you can only do so much with standard treatment of tuberculosis. You also
Right.
have to change the prison conditions.
Right. Clearly.
Yeah. So, which seems intuitive to us now, but at one point was actually was a very serious intervention. You know, and Farmer borrowed quite a bit from liberation theology as well, and thinking about sort of the social condition of people in suffering. Anyway, so the theoretical element and effect comes when we recognize a problem, we make a judgment about the problem, and then we act on it. But we have to ask ourselves if our judgments are fair judgments. Well, what do you think? What do you think about that question? Because, I mean, I've got some really abstract kind of responses to it, but I'm curious if have you thought about this, or you think
No.
fair enough.
I'm not in academia,
Oh, I forgot that part. Yeah, my bad.
but I mean, if you're not in academia, I think it's your own. It has to be your own curiosity to want to self-improve. So it's like either maybe it's a selfish reason, like you want to have a higher performance, and so now you're gonna, you know, create data points for you to mark it out and figure out, okay, this is my sprint time, this is as fast as I'm able to do this.
Yeah.
You know, you'll create metrics for whatever it is that you're doing. But or you have your aha moment, where I know I did, where I used to be in shape, then I ballooned up, and then I kind of was like just sick of myself, and I said something needs to change. And that's something that needed to change. Maybe it was initially my own wanting to create barriers, where now I'm saying I need to study the science, and I need to know what the fuck a carbohydrate is, and discuss, you know, deep science, biology, chemistry, while at the same time trying to prepare my body to lose this weight. I wanted my brain to know what it is that I did to myself
Oh, I see. Yeah.
to get there, to now unwind it. Okay? So it's either you're on a performance aspect of wanting to do self-discovery, and that could be true in literature, right?
Yeah.
Or you have this moment where it's clear as day, right? You need to make a change. And that only happens by doing the hard work at night, right? And then figuring out what it is, what's wrong, where this train derail, right? And what do you need to do to get it back on, to become the better, greatest version of you, right? And so it's a growth and an unwind, right? And I think that's how maybe there's a disconnect in academia, where it's, we need to teach you first, this is how you should approach it, right? Like this is how we would approach it. Perhaps this is how an artist might approach it. And where are you? Or are you more of the data side? Right? And so picking the three of them and giving credence to all of them is a process that, number one, is going to take a lot of time, that I don't know that as a professor you have the time to do that, right? You're here to do a course, and you're supposed to finish with this kind of basic understanding of, let's say, 7 to 8 concepts, right? And that's it. We'll cover that, and that's it. Hopefully it interested you enough that you might dig deeper. It might not happen today, it might not happen in the next year, but like within the next couple decades, something in here might spark something else. And just the fact that you have this basic knowledge, this slight lacquer over it, now you can grow something on it.
Yeah, I see.
I think that's
Yeah.
the work. And it's difficult, I think. I don't know. I've never been in this position to try to get somebody to understand that. The furthest I've gone is just coaching baseball. Right? And I've coached it at a, like, you're in a high school level, you're kind of like in a junior college level.
Yeah.
You're trying to get better.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that you can do versus you have never played this sport before in your entire life. And I got to tell you a lot of things. And I have this massive knowledge base, right? It's not the biggest, it's not the best, but it's a lot, right? And if I'm going to impart some of this and you've never played this sport before, this is hard. That's a hard problem versus you've already done this. You know what to do. Now it's little tweaks that I can do to help you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's that fine line that I think you need to figure out with each individual child where they're at. And I can only come at it because I've seen it as a group of 15 kids or just one-on-one doing a private lesson.
I think, at the college level, one of the challenges is your class may not be necessary for their major or for their future life plan. So then the question
probably won't.
So then, or at least the career plan, you don't, but you also don't know. You also aren't sure. It may well be that the class that wasn't necessary for their major actually made a big impact on how they think about the world.
But if you're,
and you don't
how
know
big are we talking? What's the biggest versus the smallest
class?
Yeah.
I mean, the most I've taught is like, at one point I had 30 kids.
30?
Yeah.
And the smallest?
Smallest, it's a seminar of 5.
Okay.
So, but the quality of the class, but the content, I hope, was still useful. Either way.
But do you think there's more leeway for you to understand the student?
In the smaller, if I had like 100 kids, I wouldn't know how to do that. That is unlikely for me to have like 100 kids.
Would you be, let's think this through, which kind of the questions are kind of lining up with, like, think of it like a semiconductor. You have 100 students, you have your exams, you have your material.
No, hopefully with them.
Boom. Here it goes. Here's the presentation. Here, do your reading. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
I know you. You wouldn't do that. No. You would say, to the hell with this system.
Because I don't have time for that, yeah.
No, I don't. Exactly. You do have time.
Oh, right, my bad.
But you don't have the bandwidth for it.
Because it's just too, because I prefer a smaller seminar to actually get to know the students. So that I can actually, like,
help you. Help you.
Yes, I see what you mean.
Because if it's 100, if it's 1,000, how am I going to help you?
The problem of diminishing returns.
But the probability that you might find one.
Yeah.
That you sparked.
Yeah.
That light for them to go deep into that nugget is possible. Even if it's 100, even if it's 5.
Yeah.
I think it just depends on you.
Yeah. Well, I suppose so.
Right?
I suppose so. I've never really thought about, having bigger seminars. The most I would want, 40.
Well, hopefully, if this podcast does well,
Professor Ron, take a class with Professor Ron.
You've reached more than 30. Hopefully,
I'm good with that.
Hopefully, the views might be higher than 30.
And even if not,
and
even if not, this was a good conversation.
For sure, the shorts. I can promise you that. We'll slice this up into little shorts, and we'll have one that'll do well.
That's great.
At least one. But that's the one that we're after.
That's what we're after. Oh, that's funny.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. Cheers.
Okay. That's what I think about it.
There you
Okay. Next question.
I got 2 more in me, then I'm done.
2 more. All right, fine. I'm going to ask you from another person. Remember I said that there was 3 people.
Okay.
The first one was kind of just a general, let's talk about everything, right?
Great.
The second person was a little bit more hyper-focused on in the institution, health, biology, right?
Gotcha. Sure.
This third one, math.
Okay.
I purposely pick people that you don't teach or study.
Sure. To see what I would do.
But actually, you do study, so I mean, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I guess. All right. Well, name me something. Jesus fuck. I don't know how to answer anything.
No, dude.
Let's just see.
We're
Okay, go.
doing it.
All
We're
right.
doing it.
Sure, fine.
What do you mean? Do professors at your institution have any skin in the game when they make bold predictions, or are they insulated from the consequences of being wrong?
Prediction.
Not a lot of people's careers are based on. We should hope they're not based on prediction, and being well at forecasting. If they can talk about principles, like logical principles behind forecasting, that's interesting. I've been thinking lately about the bellwether as as sort of a philosophical problem, and I don't know if it's a mathematical problem quite yet.
Okay.
But it's interesting, there's different kinds of objects we use for the purpose of prediction, or if nothing else, as an index for the behavior of a system or behavior of a domain. So one kind of bellwether is like the canary in the coal mine.
Right.
Now that's interesting to me because it's like, all right, well, the canary was brought in because it was called a sentinel species, things that we use to forecast other sorts of things in the world. And, the canary breathes a lot. Its lungs are smaller, but it breathes a lot, apparently. And so it would die from the toxins that are in the area, and that would tell people, oh, obviously you know what canary in the coal mine is, but maybe they don't. Anyway, so then that's how the phrase "the canary in the coal mine" came in, right? Blah, 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 blah. That's a kind of bellwether. But other kinds of bellwethers seem to have a causative relationship to the wider domain. So when we say that a blah, blah, blah county is a bellwether county, like, oh, yeah, if such and such county in the state goes this way, then we know the rest of the state is going to go this other way.
Okay.
Or going to go the same way. Then that's a different kind of bellwether. That's a bellwether that has a causative relationship, right? Especially because of the county has population. This population, right, sort of has a huge, weight in determining the color of the state. Then within certain market structures, like the market actor that we might, or market object that we might look at and say is a bellwether for future trends in the market. Well, that actor is also that object is also an actor in the market, and if it's an important actor, then its behavior actually does something to the domain.
Sure.
But the canary in the coal mine didn't cause the toxin. The canary in the coal mine is just an index. It's an indexical kind of bellwether. So there's 2 kinds of, at least it seems to me, bellwethers. Like there's or 2 classes of indexicality. One kind of index.
2 orders.
Right, like 2 orders, right? Like one indexical sort of bellwether is just one that just simply is a simple one that just tells us what's happening.
Right.
But then there's another that has a causative relationship.
Sure.
So it's like they allow us to predict, but the reasons they allow us to predict are because we don't assign a causative relationship to one versus the other. I find that to be an interesting problem, but that's as far as I get with prediction, with thinking about bellwethers, and how well we use the bellwethers. Anyway, that's all I got.
I mean, I know Charlie Munger, he used to have to do weather prediction for the Navy, and he came up with a heuristic that basically was kind of groundbreaking for the military. And it was pretty simple. If there's clouds, we're not flying. It's not worth the risk.
And that's another. And then the question is, right? But like ground level, But ground level behavior, ground level predictions are one
No,
thing
no,
as
no,
opposed
no,
to.
no.
Yeah, no, but sorry, I have
Read
a
it.
friend. Yeah, no, I'll read it. But I have a friend who works in climate prediction with the European Commission, and he talks about this. He talks about like, like that. If you what we can observe from satellites give us 1 degree of clarity versus what we can view from the ground. Anyway, sorry, like ground truth and observation, whatever. Let's talk about.
Sure.
All right, moving on. Next thing. Yeah.
But if you can see it, don't fly.
Yeah, if you see clouds, don't fly.
Do you think the academic system itself is anti-fragile, or is it just one big fragile bureaucracy waiting to collapse under its own weight? What lessons can academia learn from natural systems that thrive under stress instead of breaking down?
The analogy between natural systems and social systems is an incomplete one.
That's nature, right?
True.
That's cataclysmic events. That's the dinosaur dying.
I guess.
That's Godzilla no longer existing.
Yeah. Natural systems analogies are troubling because they're being mediated in language. So we would have to determine what are the characteristics shared between natural and social systems.
Right.
That's sometimes hard to do. I don't think institutions are just waiting to collapse. I don't think that.
And ChatGPT's got some strong language.
Right. Yeah. I don't think natural systems or social systems are just waiting to collapse. But one thing I suppose I'm trying to think. Well, what was the study of model transfer where people applied the killing off of a species to
Like extinction events?
Cancer treatment.
Okay.
Or to sort of treatments of a regenerative condition. They found that you don't, if you want to kill a species, you don't pull back. There we go. You don't pull back when the species seems to be declining at such a minuscule rate, where it's such a minuscule number of population that you think it won't regenerate. It could find a way to regenerate.
Sure.
You pull back. Even you keep going even when it's at a minuscule layer, and that is an interesting problem that you could say social systems and natural systems share, is that there's a regenerative element, and that when facing pressures but you can see how
I'm laughing because somehow my brain was like Trump getting shot at.
Oh my God, no! I don't know about all that. Okay, I'm not going there. I don't know about all that, but
That's hilarious.
That's hilarious. No, but
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's funny. But I'm just saying, like the general problem of regeneration, I think, is something that is obviously not only unique to natural systems. Social systems regenerate, and they die and whatnot.
They also collapse.
Precisely. But I don't think institutions are necessarily ready to collapse all the time.
Yeah.
And natural systems, and social systems, I think, could learn to apply regenerative practices that are best for the kinds of conditions that it is aware of and what it might anticipate. But that's all I got.
Okay.
It's an interesting question. Thanks, GPT.
Let's do like two or three more.
Two or three more.
How do you address the rampant misuse of statistics in social sciences and economics? Are students learning to be skeptical of models, or are they just taught to worship them? What's the biggest statistical fallacy you see in research, and why hasn't it been challenged?
Okay, so ongoing statistical model, I can't really answer about.
Right, it's not your field.
Particular misuses. But in terms of worshiping the model,
yeah,
it is possible.
Dogma.
It's possible to do that because a model, for instance, an econometric model is an assertion about the structure of the data, but is not really itself a computation that helps us determine the distribution of probabilities of particular objects within a domain. And all that means is, a model gives us a kind of working hypothesis for behaviors, and to take them as anything more as a working hypothesis that we test with particular data points would be, I think, a logical fallacy.
Okay.
And most logical fallacies or statistical fallacies can be reduced to reifying the model as a thing in itself, as opposed to something that could be improved under particular test conditions. But that's as far as I get in terms of ongoing statistical models. One mistake, I'm trying to think. One thing I see ongoing. No, I don't got one. I've been thinking a lot about the Gordon Schaefer model, relating with the fisheries.
Okay.
This is like a fisheries one. It's something about like both human consumption as well as fish. Like it's regenerative, the regenerative properties of a given like population of fish, and they have to sort of determine the equilibrium behind that. That's an interesting one. Another one is the Roy model, something I've been thinking about. I read a paper about this recently, about the Roy model, which is about skill and meeting the job and wages related to that. People seek particular wages related to a particular job because they're higher wages. But, that's a serious reduction of the Roy model. But, like, there's, because it's sort of intuitive. In a way, it's intuitive.
Yeah.
But the way he got to it is really interesting. It's like, okay, there's certain things you need to do that are related to fishing, and there's certain things you related to do with hunting rabbits, or just hunting. And these are different but related skills. But, we might ask how people choose their jobs. Like, do they acquire the skills to meet the wages, or is there something about the job itself that makes it hard to acquire particular skills? That's something to think about. And I think if you don't ask about the content of the job and only about the wages, then you might be making a particular misreading of what's interesting about the Roy model.
No, 100% you are.
Yeah, but that's all I get so far in terms of thinking about particular models. But I would venture that most statistical fallacies boil down to thinking of the model as a thing in and of itself, as opposed to something that could be scrutinized based off of certain test conditions that would need revision of the model. That's all I got. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
The bell curve is real.
Yeah, as if the bell curve is a thing in itself, as opposed to just something that we use to describe distribution of features in or distributed concentrations of features in a given domain, I guess. Yeah.
What part of the curriculum is Lindy? Things that will still be relevant in 1,000 years. And how much is just noise that will be forgotten in a decade? Are we teaching students timeless principles, or are we filling their heads with ideas that won't survive the next crisis?
Okay, look. Timeless principles, only have a
genocide is bad.
Well, that's sort of obvious. Some timeless principles are intuitive and you don't need college for. The ones that you do need college for, some of them are kind of baked into the way we teach things that won't respond to crises very well. Some timeless principles do not respond to crises very well, but they still endure on the other side of the crisis, I think.
Yeah.
And some things that we would use to respond to crises aren't timeless principles. They might be very, very bounded responses. But in terms of getting to the details of that, I can't really process. I haven't thought about. I'm not really thinking about that particularly. But we don't only teach timeless principles, and we don't only teach wasteful stuff. We teach some stuff that only meets present conditions, or primarily meets present conditions, and that's fine. That's cool. I'm okay with that. Because we want some, pretty clear returns on utility value projections. We want to be able to say that our utility value projections were, met the conditions of the cases. And when you have a shorter time horizon than 1,000 years, then you can actually do that. You can actually make these fair projections. But and confirm the projections. But timeless principles, the things that we've had around, like don't tell lies, tell the truth, seek justice wherever you can, listen to the other. These are timeless principles that you don't really need college for, but they become, I think, maybe refined in a particular way in college because they become applied to certain fields of study. That's all I got. Yeah, that's all I got. That's a very interesting question, though. Yeah.
I think that's enough ChatGPT.
That's enough ChatGPT for now. Ha! ChatGPT is very funny. It was the stuff in between the questions that I think was really fun. The going back and forth. That was really cool.
Yeah, I mean that's
Cheers.
what we're supposed to do.
That's
bro.
what we're doing. Hashtag dialogue.
Of course.
Cheers.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? Is there something you want to say? Any last closing statements? Any shout outs?
Nope. This has been
Final requests?
Final requests.
Comments, questions, concerns?
I don't know. Chill out with the memes a little bit. That's all I got.
I am the meme lord.
Oh my god.
If you are my friend, you receive meme galore.
All right. Podcast over. Jeez.
All right. This is John. This is Professor Ron. We're signing out. This is Below the Trees, episode 10. Like Brian would say, who's currently, he might be off by now, but was working today, which is why I had to do the pod solo. So, do all the YouTube stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, comment, more comments and questions. We'll see you later.
Great stuff.